How we doing, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Friday Ramblings. I am your host, the Bardic one. I am the man in the green, because it's March, and we got one more blast of pop culture glory for you. We're going to be keeping with our green is the scene theme this month, while also continuing our ongoing look at the legacy of the golden age of DC comic heroes, specifically those members of the Justice Society, because we are talking about the original Green Lantern Alan Scott. However, we're not going to be looking at his direct legacy through the Silver Age Green Lantern of Hal Jordan and the extended Green Lantern Corps, because while there is technically that legacy name link, there is a much more direct link to Alan Scott to the next generation of heroes, and that is his biological children. So, we're going to be doing more of a family tree go through this time around. Plus, the Green Lantern Corps is kind of its own mess of hill to begin with. So why is there a Green Lantern and a Green Lantern Corps, but they're not part of the same history and legacy and talk? Well, let's go ahead and knock that out first, because we're going to start with the Green Man himself. We are going to start with Alan Scott. First things first, Alan Scott originally appeared in All-American Comics number 16 in July of 1940, and he was created by Martin Odell and Bill Finger. Now, it should be noted that Alan Scott's Green Lantern ring has always been treated as powered by mystical energy. It is a magic ring, quite literally, as it is inspired by the old tales of Aladdin and Sinbad and those kind of characters. As such, see, Alan, Aladdin, there's a little bit of a name link there. And that is one of the things that, when they recreated the Green Lanterns for the Silver Age, differentiated things. Hal Jordan's ring was always stated to be a piece of alien technology, even though the two rings have the same basic effect, which is that they can create any energy construct that the wielder can picture in their mind. Hal's is scientifically based, like all members of the Green Lantern Corps. It is a piece of technology created to channel the natural powers of the Guardians of the Universe, whereas Alan Scott is channeling mystical energy. His is magic. It is his own thing. Specifically, a meteor, Leia referred to as the Starheart, that was forged into his ring and a lantern, hence Green Lantern, did the energy charge thing. That did stick between different variants. That, is the basic origin of his powers. A ring and a lantern forged from a meteorite that is imbued with mystical energy. As such, besides his classic Justice Society teammates, Alan Scott has, at various times, aided other magic users in the DC universe, such as the Sentinels of Magic, which was a smaller run team, but they did some interesting things. So, go for it. Alan Scott has also worked with, in more modern years, government agency Checkmate, and served in those modern times as an ally to various Green Lanterns, especially the young rookie Kyle Rayner, who we discussed way back in one of my earliest ramblings in a video focusing on the era where Kyle Rayner was the only member of the Green Lantern Corps, as part of their refreshing of the modern science-based Green Lantern concept. But as I said, we're mostly focusing on Alan. now that we've gotten the differences between Alan and the core lanterns out of the way. So as we said, Green Lantern was a long-standing member of the Justice Society of America, and in the modern era, along with Jay Garrick, served as the main two mentors to the younger generation of legacy heroes that would make up the present-day incarnations of the Justice Society, being a patient, experienced, wise man who also appreciates the importance of having a good role model effect on the younger heroes. Partly because by the time of the modern Justice Society, he, as we've said at the start of the video, had children in his own right. Now, real quick, because we're not going to go into a super long depth of Alan Scott's legacy. He could cover everything in and of itself, but Alan Scott, due to his powers being mystical based, has had a few oddities in his career. Originally, he was a hero of the 40s, and his mystical energies, along with those of a villain that affected the greater Justice Society team, kept him young for a while. That effect was the effect from the villain, Ein Krull, or Karl Krull, was negated during 0 hour. Most of the JSA aged to the point where they could not physically work in the field anymore. Alan aged a few years, but his own personal mystical energies kept him physically viable. Eventually, he would, at one point, have that protection removed, and he would be the age you would expect a man in his who was an active superhero, adult superhero in the 40s, to look in the 90s. Later on, he would actually, the same mystical energies would kick in into overdrive and reduce him to his physical prime, which would be a man roughly in his 30s. He would then age again, not quite as old as he should be, but he would still gain a few more decades back as part of the modern JSA era. So his ages have kind of gone up and down depending on what series you're reading and how the mystical energies feel like cooperating with Alan and how much they want him risking his life saving the world. Also of note is that besides using the term Green Lantern, at one point Alan Scott internalized the energies of the Starheart into his body and did not require the ring and the lantern to recharge the ring, and he changed his name to Sentinel, along with modifying his costume. Later on, as the magic scene in DC in general would go crazy, he would reform the ring and the lantern and go back to being Green Lantern. So, he's had a few name changes back and forth over time too, which, hey, it was all good. He was still Alan inside. The other big note, as far as his powers go, is that unlike the classic Green Lantern Corps, who for decades was said to have a inherent weakness to yellow, aka the yellow impurity, that was later revealed post-rebirth to be connected to Parallax, the fear entity, and that the yellow impurity could be overcome if you could acknowledge the effect fear has on your psyche and further overcome that. It's a mental thing, which means if you get too freaked out in battle and lose your mental focus and willpower just enough, the yellow impurity kicks back in. It's an ongoing thing. It's weird. It's something that's, But for Alan Scott, it is a long-standing, just straight up, it's there, inability to affect wood, and therefore weapons made out of wood, like a simple bat. his inherent little Green Lantern force shield cannot protect against it. Again, back in the 40s and stuff, 40s, 50s, this was a weakness you could do a lot with plot-wise because firearms weren't as prevalent, things like aluminum baseball bats weren't as prevalent, wooden weapons were much more commonplace, so it was a thing. Not to mention you would have your plant-based entities. There's been a few enemies like that who are inherently prone to have an advantage over Alan Scott in a fight. So he has to be extra careful around them. So, what about Alan Scott's personal life? Well, this is, and how this affects his family, is where we have some fun. Alan Scott's first marriage was to a woman named Rose Canton, who had been known in the Golden Age as the Rose and Thorn, a villain who had suffered from a split personality. Nowadays, of course, it would be referred to as dissociative identity disorder, but different decades, different understanding of psychological concept. Classic split personality. Rose was the good person, Thorn was the bad person. Eventually, thanks to some help from Wonder Woman and the Amazons, Rose would long-term suppress the Thorn persona. During this time of recovery, Rose fell in love with Alan Scott, however, knowing that he would recognize her as a villain and probably not give her a fair chance. She dyed her hair black and assumed the identity of Alex Florin before romantically pursuing him, leading to their marriage. Unfortunately, on their honeymoon, the Thorn persona resurfaced. Personality of Rose was unable to prevent Thorn from attempting to kill Alan, so she chose to go on the run, preferring Alan to believe she had perished in a fire that consumed their cabin. However, their interrupted honeymoon was just long enough, and she conceived, and she was blah 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 blah. Let me get my medical terminology and grammar here correctly. The two of them managed to conceive, and she gave birth to twins, who we will touch on in just a minute. Rose herself would later surface as an adult, where, with the Thorn persona in full control, she faced her husband and two grown children. To keep Thorn from killing them, Rose fatally stabbed herself in the heart after revealing who she was and the full story of the twins' origins, as well as having faked her identity to Alan as part of her attempts to have an honest chance with Alan romantically, as well as, in theory, start a new life away from the whole Rose and Thorn villainous past she had. Later on, after a few years, Alan Scott would get married again, this time to a woman called Molly Main, who had served as his secretary during the Golden Age when he was a radio broadcaster in Gotham. He was actually the director of the Gotham Broadcasting Corporation. Molly Main had a brief career as the tech-powered Harlequin. Now note, this is Harlequin as one word, not Harley Quinn, the little female inspired by Joker character that everybody knows because of the movies and the cartoon shows. There have actually been a few different Harlequins, and then the one Harley Quinn. Basically, she was created for the cartoon show as a nod to the Harlequin legacy, but they didn't want to get completely bogged down in it. It was more of a they wanted to make more of kind of a cute little reference to the existing characters for the long-term DC historian fans to get a bit of a chuckle out of. Most of the just Harlequin, one word, characters do not have a history with Joker. In fact, none of them really do. Which was part of why they made her Harleen Quinzel Harley Quinn. But as I said, Molly Mayne had long retired from villainy as Harlequin, and Alan Scott, once he had had time to come to terms with his original marriage and the psychological and emotional complications of it, recognized that he had for years had deep romantic feelings for Molly, and had simply, because they had known each other professionally through the radio station, he had been unable to really, have that whole professional, personal life thing intermesh in his brain is a good thing. And that's not really that horrible a concept. A lot of people, especially in different decades where there's different cultures, worried about mixing personal and professional lives. He had also known that as the Harlequin, Molly had a thing for Green Lantern. It was one of those situations where, you can understand why Alan needed some time to subconsciously sort all that through his head. But he and Molly did marry and remained married for many years, really up until the whole New 52 Flashpoint reboot, resetting of things. So, good for Alan. He did find the woman he loves. They had a brief issue there with his habit of not physically being the age of that he should, and as such the age of his wife. And because he was much physically younger, still going out and superheroing, while she was just chilling as a stay-at-home wife. So during an event where a particular demon named Neron was making a lot of deals for souls with various members of the superhero and supervillain community, she sold her soul to regain her youth, thinking that would fix the problems between her and Alan. Long story short, it didn't, but Alan teamed up with Kyle Rayner to retrieve Molly's soul from hell and restore it to her ownership. She did herself regain her original age in the process, but, as I said, shortly thereafter, Alan himself would age and start pulling back from active field duty. So their marriage ended up continuing happily. So, let's discuss the twins. First up, we have the female twin, Jade Jennifer Lynn Hayden, who debuted in All-Star Squadron number 25, which was basically an issue designed to introduce that second generation of Justice Society characters for the formation of the Infinity Inc. book they had already decided to make. We have discussed Infinity Inc. in detail in another video. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and link to that and the Kyle Rayner Lone Lantern era video in the descriptions, because they are related videos and therefore it's good viewing if you didn't catch them the first time through. Now, Jennifer Lynn would eventually take on similar powers to her father. Her skin itself would turn green and her hair would be green as well. However, her powers, instead of being connected to an external source, were all internalized. She had a little star symbol on the palm of her hands that she would channel her power through. She would have taken the nickname or code name Jade because of this. Jade herself, besides working with the Infinity Inc., has also worked with later versions of the Outsiders, the Justice Society of America, the Green Lantern Corps, was a brief member of the White Lantern Corps during the Blackest Night, Brightest Day events, as well as serving on the brief-lived Team Blood Pack, and a short stint on the Justice League. So Jade has definitely been an incredible hero in her own right, serving with many teams, especially post-Infinity Inc., in that mentor role to younger heroes, like that third generation of Justice Society heroes we discussed, the Blood Pack, where she was the only veteran member of a team that was otherwise characters created for the sake of that Blood Pack series. So there you go. She did. She has been romantically linked to Kyle Rayner, as well as Infinity Inc. teammate Hank King Jr., aka Brainwave, and is the kind of person that is. She's definitely like her father, believes in the best of people, enjoys her life, has done a little modeling in order to pay the rent, because of course most superhero teams do not in fact pay out for superheroing, and so superheroes have to get day jobs. So, it's really interesting, because Jade is one of those heroes that, as I said, has almost never disappeared from the books. She's probably, out of the Infinitors, one of the most successful members, in that after the book got canceled, she might disappear for a year or two, but, 3-4 years, I think at most, is her longest stretch, but somebody eventually wants to write her. Here's a character that functionally has the powers of the Green Lanterns, does not have the yellow or wood weakness like her father, but also, for those lovely, hormonally led teenage boys, is a pretty young lass as well. Look, I'm not saying that's an attitude everybody should have their entire lives, but let's be honest, folks. As I said, when you're in the throes of puberty and you are attracted to females, if you're going to read books about people walking around in skin-tight clothing, you kind of like having some of those characters be female. It's something you got to psychologically work through. It's part of growing up and growing wiser and getting control of your emotions. But throughout it all, as I said, Jade has maintained a generally positive attitude, although is prone to standing up for herself, including to her own father, as being an experienced hero with a lot of power. She does not believe in playing second fiddle or damsel in distress. Jade will kick butt with the best of anybody. So, we're left with her twin brother. Let's run through this gentleman real quick, who has not had quite as much success as Jade, but does have a somewhat interesting history. Todd James Rice would take on the name Obsidian, also debuted in All-Star Squadron number 25. And unlike any of his parents, Obsidian has various shadow-based powers, which seemed to have been linked to his father's exposure to the shadow energy of Ian Karkull, the gentleman we spoke of earlier whose lingering shadow magics helped reduce the ravages of aging on various Justice Society members. Obsidian himself is connected to the Shadowlands, a dimension of primordial quasi-sentient darkness. At will, Obsidian can merge with his own shadow and possess the shadow of others, and in his shadow form he is stronger than in human form, can pass through solid objects, and can fly. Obsidian also has limited telepathic abilities and can force a person to see the evil side of their own soul, which, to the psychologically unprepared or weak, has been known to drive people insane. Similar to Ghost Rider over in Marvel Comics and his Penance Stare. Now, it is noted that others who are connected to the Shadowlands, such as the Shade, have displayed levels of immortality. So, we're not really sure if Obsidian's going to live forever or simply have extremely long-lived life yet. Because as I said, he doesn't tend to show up quite as often as his sister Jade. So, Obsidian himself has worked with the Justice Society of America, briefly on the Justice League, and of course Infinity Inc. Mostly, though, due to the fact that he, unfortunately, as somebody like his sister Jade that was raised by a foster family after Rose gave birth to twins and gave them up, fearing the Thorn persona would hurt them. Unlike Jade, who was placed in a happy, supportive family, Todd was raised by an abusive father, and as such, has a lot of anger management issues, as well as a bit of a codependent streak when it comes to his sister Jade. This has prompted Jade to occasionally push him away and forcibly insist Todd retire from superheroics and give her some space for a little while because, as I said, he tends to be a little clingy and codependent. However, that was more the Infinity Inc. era. Brief hints of it in the modern era, especially in that last year or two before Flashpoint. There was a plot where Jade and Obsidian powers interacted and meshed, and they became like this one new hybrid being. Obsidian enjoyed the experience because Jade's mental, stability helped him find an inner peace he had always struggled with. Jade herself wasn't thrilled with the merger, and as such, was not eager to get physically close to Obsidian again. That was a plot point that was not fully explored until Flashpoint kind of reset everything, which is why we just don't talk about things post-Flashpoint. Still, despite having occasional problems that keep him from working on the front line, Todd Rice is, when he is in full control of his thought process, a good man, a moral man, and a powerful hero, as we discussed, talking about his various shadow powers. I mean, really, the guy can pass through solid objects, he can fly, he can transport people through the Shadowlands, he can mess with your own head. Highly useful guy when he's got that mindset that, hey, I can be a great hero in my own right without trying to force it and do something stupid or worrying about impressing my father and or sister. What can I say? Alan was always a little closer once he met them to his daughter because of their shared powers. It was easier for him to deal with, though. In the modern Justice Society comics, he did make more of an effort to bond with Todd and be a good father to him. The only major final note we can put on Obsidian is that Obsidian was one of the first DC heroes to come out as homosexual. During the original Infinity Inc. comic, he had a short-lived, awkward relationship with the third woman to don the Harlequin identity. However, the ending of that comic, then disbanding of Infinity Inc., along with the revelations that Marcy Cooper's powers were tied into the Manhunter organization, which was evil as well. It was one of those things where it was, at the time, people just figured that had more to do with their relationship not continuing. But still, this plot point was picked up, and later writers decided to, during his short tenure in the Justice League, show some sexual confusion. Originally, when asked by his longtime friend from Infinity Inc., who he was also serving on the League with, Nuklon, that Nuklon asked if he was gay, Obsidian responded simply with, "Why must there be labels?" Eventually, Todd appears in Manhunter 18, which focuses on a heroic person using the Manhunter identity. We're going to have to cover the Manhunter Legacy at some point. It's a little convoluted. It's definitely going to need a video in its own right. But still. Where we do see him share a kiss with the male Damon Matthews, who himself was a recurring gay character in the Manhunter series. At this point, Todd confirmed that he had come to accept himself in many ways, including his attraction to other men, which, full support for it. Here you have a character that had only really been seen interacting with one female in a romantic way. It was awkward, troubled. There was a few different ways you could have interpreted the reasons why they didn't work out, and he was never 100% comfortable with it, leading to a period where he himself wasn't sure about his own attractions. Again, I'm trying to phrase this, in a way that's respectful to everybody, because, I'm all for it, Whoever you love, as long as both people love each other, that's all that matters to me. That everybody just be happy in love. Whether it's, this and this, A and B, A and A, B and B, A and C, C and C, A and L, F, whatever, But still, Todd Rice was a character that, it felt organic. It was a good journey that took years, several appearances. We saw a man who had come from a troubled past, who, when you look at who he was raised by, would certainly have a reason to be unsure of his own emotions and how to process them, getting to that place where he could accept all his feelings and thoughts, not just to himself, but be out in the public about it. And that's awesome. The writer himself, Mark Andreyko, states this, that, quote, "I didn't want to make a character gay unless it felt organic." So the list was pretty short. Then I remembered when Obsidian was in the JLA years ago and Gerard Jones, the writer, danced around the issue. I went back and read all my Infinity Inks, and although Todd dated women, it was always a mess. And Dreyko said that DC was supportive, wanting a visible gay character, and that it was a general void in the DCU that needed exploration. Jeff Jones, longtime writer of JSA, also stated his support for the idea. Later on, Bill Winningham took over the JSA title, and Despite being somebody whose personal politics were not always in line with the rights of homosexuals, did not retcon any of this, and in fact joked about the concerns from some fans that, given the way his personal politics have played into his writing, that he might try to retcon this out or ignore the plot point completely. Nope. He had Obsidian make a quick joke about it, showing that he was not only still homosexual, not only still comfortable with being homosexual and stating this to other people, but comfortable to the point he could joke about the fact that not everybody was comfortable around homosexuals, showing, as I said, that kind of psychological stability that he did not have earlier in his life. So good little meta commentary there. All support to Bill Winningham for taking it the best approach he could, looking at both the internal continuity and fan concerns, given his own history. Doop. And as of the most recent Justice Society of America issue that referenced his personal life before the whole Flashpoint reboot, Todd and Damon were still dating. So, hey, even got a good, healthy, long-term relationship out of it. As I said, great thing. So for wrapping up, hey, if you're going to get into the JSA and Golden Age history, you are going to run up against Alan Scott. When it comes to the Silver Age, especially getting into the 90s and forward, Jade does pop up regularly. Obsidian himself does pop up in a few key places. Molly Main made a great supporting character for Alan in stories focused on him as an individual and his family life. And even his original wife, Rose Cannon, Canton, did not pronounce the T the first time, I apologize. Her whole tragic story did make for some wonderful issues of Infinity Inc., as well as dealing with the very real nature of how having mental health issues without a good support system can lead a person to serious despair and trouble. So, we saw it with Rose, we saw it with Obsidian. Please, by all means, if you're not feeling mentally healthy on any level, feel free to talk about it with people. Todd was always at his happiest as a character when he was open about what he thought and how he felt, and as such, relying on that support system of friends and family. Rose, sadly, apparently didn't have that, but it's a thing, and this is one of those parts of storytelling that I always believe in and support, that you can show both sides of issues. That can inspire people to help make better choices, to make their own life happier, in ways that still organically grow characters, make them you enjoy reading the stories. You're not, as the metaphor goes, beaten over the head with the, public service announcement aspect. It's a thing. Obsidian is an interesting character in his own right, even if he never had a long run on a single title. Jade is a brilliant character, strong woman who's, always known that she's capable of doing what she wants, whether that's being romantically involved with another hero helping keep her father's legacy alive, or making her own name. Alan himself is one of the most highly respected members of the superhero community, and through his association with the Justice Society, the Sentinels of Magic, and the government-run Checkmate, has connections throughout the hero world. So, much respects to Alan. And with that, we are done with this edition. We are done with the discussion of the Alan Scott legacy, at least on the family tree side, which is always an important legacy. And we are done with March. I thank everybody that rode this thematic ride with us, even if it was a bit of a stretch at times. Still, we gotta have fun. That's what Roulette Productions is all about. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit your notification bell, dig through the archives of not just the Friday Ramblings, but all of the shows on the Roulette Productions channel. I have my 2 shows. My partner Jaime has his own shows. It's a lot of good fun. It's a little bit of everything. So no matter what you're into, comics, video games, classic literature, movies, TV shows, between the 2 of us, we're bound to discuss it at some point if we have not already. And of course, anytime you want to make suggestions, let us know. We do love to communicate with our viewers. Till I see you next time, stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy, and stay entertained. Till the roulette wheel spins around again. Bye-bye, folks.